Hey everyone, I want to quickly explain how your assignment is going to go today. It's called coin flip math. All you need is a coin of any type. So right here I have a penny, but you can have a nickel, you can have a dime, you can have a quarter, it doesn't really matter, as long as you have a coin that has a heads and tails on it. So basically you're going to flip this coin a certain number of times, and then you're going to figure out how many times it lands on heads as a fraction, decimal, and percent, and how many times it lands on tails as a fraction, decimals, and percent. So I want to quickly explain and show you and demonstrate how one of these would potentially go. So if I was doing table number 1, it says flip the coin 5 total times. So I'm going to take this coin, I'm going to flip it 5 times. I do think it would be helpful if you had a piece of scratch paper here so you can tally up how many times it lands on heads and how many times it lands on tails. So let's do this. So if I'm doing 5 times, I'm going to flip. All right, first one was heads. So I'm going to mark a tally on heads. Flip it again. We got tails that time, so that's 1 and 1. Third time, we got tails again, which means that it's landed on tails twice and it's landed on heads once. All right, flipped it a 4 times, it's tails again, so we have 3 tails, 1 heads, and the last flip landed on heads. So I got 2 heads and 3 tails. So when I'm looking at this table now, the first box here, it says that the number of times it landed on heads as a fraction out of 5. Well, it landed on heads 2 times out of 5 total flips, right? So that means it landed on tails 3 times out of 5 total flips. So that's how you would start. Then it says, can you simplify the fraction? Well, since these are fifths, I'm not going to be able to simplify it any, right? You're going to have to simplify when you get to 10 and 20 maybe flips, but right now for 5, I don't have to simplify, so I can just put 2/5 again and 3/5 again. Then it says we need to write this fraction as a decimal. This is what we've been working on, right? So if I have 2/5, how can I make this fraction a decimal? Well, I know that 5 can easily go into 10 twice, right? So if I did 5 times 2, that's going to get my denominator to be 10. So that means I have to multiply 2 to the top as well, because whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top, which means that 2 times 2 is 4. So 2/5 is really like saying 4/10. And when I think about decimals, I know how to write 4/10 because I know place value, right? So 4/10 would be written as 0 and 4/10. Okay? Then it wants us to write it as percentage, but we're going to get to that in just a second. The next one says, right, for tails. So tails was 3 out of 5. So if I were to do the same thing that I did for 2/5, 3/5 equals what over 10? 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 2 is 6. So I know that 3/5 is equal to 6/10, right? So 6/10 would be written as 0 and 6/10, just like that as a decimal. And the last thing you need to figure out in the table is how you would write that fraction as a percentage. So remember, for percents, we want to make those numbers out of 100. So how can I make 2/5 equals something out of 100? So now we're trying to look here, okay? So how can I get from that 5 to that 100? Well, I know 5 times 20 is going to get me to 100. So 5 times 20 is 100, which means that I have to do 2 times 20 at the top. 2 times 20 is 40, so that means that 40 out of 100 would be equivalent to 2/5, which means 40%, 40% of the time it landed on heads today, okay? And then we know that these are numbers out of 100, right? Percentages are always percentages out of 100. So if 40% of the time it landed on heads, that means that 60% of the time it landed on tails, because those two numbers together equal 100. All right, hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any other questions. All right, you're going to do this. The first table you're going to do 5 times. The second table you're going to flip the coin 10 times. And the third table you're going to flip the coin 20 total times. So make sure you have some scratch paper out to work out your math and to keep track of how many times it lands on heads and tails. All right, hope you have some fun with this, and let me know if you have any questions.